Recording in progress.
Okay, so we're starting. It is 5:34 and we've got everybody but Leslie here and Stephanie. I don't know if she's going to join us or not. So the introductions and virtual meeting rules. I think we all know each other here, and I think we all know the virtual meeting rules. Unless you want to say that again, or we need to say it again for the record.
Sure. I reminded Torsten earlier, just he hasn't been here in a while, that to boil it down, guests are to remain with video off and muted. Commissioners can be generally muted unless you're speaking to avoid all kinds of background noise, but you can keep video on. I believe Torsten said he was here to help answer any questions about Waterline Trail, which we're going to do an adjustment to the agenda to get Jason in on trails and whatever else you want to report as related to forest land trails, Jason, maybe not just Waterline if you have other stuff.
Okay, and then we don't need to approve the minutes because they're being recorded. And public forum, Torsten, do you have anything you want to add at this time? No, he does not. So we've got our ongoing business, and that is the first thing on it is the city council annual report. And
sorry, adjustment to agenda to add a trails report from Jason.
Oh, yeah. That's right. So we have an adjustment to the agenda, and we're going to talk so that Jason can give us an update on trails. That's ongoing business. And why don't we start with that now, Jason?
All right. So as far as trails in general, there's not a whole lot to report, not a whole lot going on trails as far as maintenance or complaints or anything like that currently. But at our last meeting, I was asked to get clarification from the geologist so we could move forward with the Waterline Trail. So I did. I had a conversation with him yesterday, and basically the concerns we had, he put in there as I don't know, basically extreme measures. So when he said toe kicks along the trail, he put that in there that if we needed to put in cribbing or toe kicks on the trail, we're basically free to put them in wherever we need them, even though he put in there that toe kicks could go in along the entire trail. He put that as that would be the most extreme measure. And same thing as example figure number 3, the very last page on the document. The cutting in and filling and all that stuff. He put that as again as just an extreme example of what we would do if we needed to go that far for some reason, and we don't. So he kind of clarified the issues or the concerns that we had, and basically said that he just put in the most extreme requirements, that's the extreme measures we could take for this trail, but we could do less if we need to, which the way this trail would get built will be far less. So that was a clarification on it, and I feel pretty comfortable with it. And so that's I guess that's kind of the report from the geologist.
So Jason, it sounds like basically he lightened up a little bit on his recommendations were not requirements. And like Chris pointed out, we're bound by what he has in there. So did he change anything in writing that would make it so that it doesn't look so much like requirements and more like recommendations?
No, he didn't, but he will.
Okay.
I wanted to report this before I asked him to actually make the change, or just give us a letter saying that these are just recommendations, and the recommendations are on the extreme end. So this was his first soiree, I guess, with trails. He did a pretty good job, but he didn't really understand what we were asking. And then we took him out there and walked him on the trail, because the original information he gave back, he thought we were going to pave the trail and make it like like we drive cars up and down it or something, or bicycle paved bike path kind of thing. So when we walked him out there and he looked at it, he understood, but he did say that he put everything on the extreme end, like I said. So that's like the most extreme stuff we would possibly have to do. So I don't think he necessarily meant it as those are recommendations, but those were the most extreme measures we would possibly have to take to build this trail. So I think just the kind of the way he laid it out there, it makes it look like he's recommending that, but he's not. So I can get some wording from him, just a little side note that he could top up for us, saying that these are the extreme measures, and we can use these precautions as needed while we're building the trail.
And so then the as needed would be determined by you and your understanding of trail construction and erosion control and things like that.
It would be determined by me, Chris, Torsten, the trail builders that have the knowledge for what we need to do. So,
okay.
And if for some reason we came across an area that needed the extreme measures that he put in there, then we have the guidance for that. So anything less is up to what we decide is needed on the trail. And I would probably lean on Torsten quite a bit on that. So, and I'll be there as well, and Torsten, and I'm sure Chris will be dropping in, and maybe Luke and whoever else wants to come by. But that's kind of how I'm going to approach it.
That sounds good. And you guys have a lot of experience with our past trails and trails construction about what holds up. So looks like Nate has something he wants to say.
Yeah, it seems a little backwards the way he wrote it, and I think that makes sense. But is he local? I was just curious, because if it wasn't too much, maybe he's not. But I was just gonna say, like, if after we build it, he could just say, like, stamp, like, yep, looks like it, is not gonna impact the slope stability or whatever we're looking for previously, if that's what we're trying to get before we move ahead. But if he could just do it afterwards and say, yep, like get the golden sign off or something, like that seems like that would kind of clear up any of those clarifications potentially. Does that make any sense?
Yes, I actually asked him that. He said he would definitely come out and take a look at it once we're done. He lives in Grants Pass, but he's from Nigeria, I believe. So he doesn't. He's very knowledgeable and very, very, very good at engineering, but he didn't have a whole lot of trails knowledge. So I think he might have relied on older manuals maybe, and cut and pasted some stuff, but he feels pretty confident about what he suggested. And he did suggest it backwards. He suggested the extreme instead of suggesting this is like the minimal stuff you would have to do to make this good, and then you could do the extreme if you needed to. He went straight to the extreme and then leave it up to us if we need to do less.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, Grants Pass is close, so if he's willing to
he definitely could.
Cool.
I definitely could get him on site, and
any reservations that would be there seem like they're cleared, so that's beautiful. Thanks for
we could get a stamp of approval from him, no problem.
All right, anybody else, or you have anything else you want to say about trails or Torsten? Or any questions for Torsten?
Maybe,
Um,
I was thinking maybe folks want to know what the schedule is for construction and what Torsten AWTA are looking for conditions.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we would probably wait until there's more moisture in the soils. I think we would start clearing prior to that. Remove some of the debris that's in the way. There's not actually a whole lot of debris in the way, but there's stuff we could do prior to the soil being really moist. But basically, I think we're looking at November maybe to start. If there's rain, if and when. So that's the schedule. And then how long it would take, it really remains to be seen. How there are a couple places that are going to be challenging, and we might have to actually bring in some decomposed granite to pack in, and maybe some 3/4 minus or other rock. But we'll see. I don't think it'll actually take that long to build, because after those challenging areas, I think it'll go very fast.
We may have talked about this in the field, but just a request to, if you're gonna pull away vegetation, don't do it within 50 feet of the connections. So people are starting to use the area before it's actually open for public access.
Yeah, we'll leave
Absolutely.
the start and end
Yeah.
closed off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to throw in a comment, because we probably don't say it enough, but Torsten and Jason, I mean, the work that you guys do to build trails for this community is one of the most under the radar but most impactful things going on in our town, I think. Because you're really, I mean, especially in a time like this when so many other things are shut down, we can go outside and when there's not smoke. But during the pandemic, it's been a real joy to have all these incredible trails in our town. And hats off continuously to Torsten for shepherding AWTA forward.
Yeah, and I would like to say that we do a lot of stuff in the background, but it's Torsten and AWTA out there doing most of the labor. So they, it would be really hard to do this job and manage trails without them. It wouldn't happen, actually. So we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely a quality of life, and for locals and bringing people in from far and wide. And yeah, it's a great thing that Ashland has these trails. So thanks again.
Yeah, and Torsten just popped up a question. Do we need to do a vote on this thing so we can kind of get going on this thing? I know it was just kind of put up to pending these clarifications. So I feel like we've got the clarification on it. So would that be the next step, Sil?
That's true. And thank you for keeping us on top of it.
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
And
Well,
the motion.
You gotta name what that motion is.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the building phase of Waterline Trail to the specifications and standards of AWTA laid out within the scope of the geological engineering guidelines.
Any discussion on that?
I think if we want to follow our new course, the motion should read something like what Nate said. That will start with, we recommend final approval to the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission
Oh, perfect.
so that it's really going to them so that they can give the final user and application approval. But Jason may have something to say about that.
Well, Chris, at the last one, we decided to, because we don't really know how it's working with the Parks Commission yet, because it hasn't really, Michael still wants to talk about it, and figure out how we're going to make this transition. That the last meeting, we decided that we would approve it and kind of do this one through the Forest Lands Commission as like our last trail approval before it gets passed off. And it seemed like everybody agreed with that on this one.
Thank you.
And I can speak for Michael and the Parks Commission. We all want this to happen and be done, and get it done. So I think what we talked about last time was just passing it through the Forest Lands Commission on this one as our kind of the final one for this, and then before the next one comes up, figure out how the transition is going to be done going to the Parks Commission. Does anybody else remember that?
Yeah, vaguely, but yeah, that sounds good. And so we could put forth a motion to approve the construction of a pedestrian only section of the Waterline Trail as proposed, with mitigation recommendations as outlined as needed from the geology report.
Can I ask one more question? And
Yeah,
Jason might know, just to try to keep us out of trouble in the future.
yes.
Is this an equestrian accessible trail, or are equestrians going to be on the bike portion, which
Good question.
I assume that's a question for me, and I will tell you that it is not designed for equestrians.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
It leads them to places they aren't supposed to be anyway.
okay.
So on the sign that's at the corner of Bandersnatch and Waterline, I think it says no horses. The horses can go up Bandersnatch, so they can go in that first part of Waterline and they can turn up. However, now that you raise the question, I think what we should do is provide access to the equestrians on the lower part of that Waterline reroute, and then have a quick, I think it's like 50 feet to connect to the base of Bandersnatch.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we could have a sign there and just a trail cut in and a sign that says horses that way, something like that.
Yeah.
And so what purpose or how does that make it? Like, would an equestrian choose to, to do that little alternate for just 50 feet, or would they just stay on the Waterline Trail as is?
They could stay on the Waterline Trail as is, but it wouldn't be recommended. I think they'd want to not be in the mountain bike traffic. And so this would eliminate most of the overlap, not all of it, because they still have to ride up the lower part of Waterline where it connects to the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, there aren't a whole lot of equestrians using that trail, but they can.
Well, I was kind of wondering if of how this would go. So we have this, and I'm trying to picture it. We have this section of the Waterline Trail that's pedestrian only, and it's what, a couple 100 feet long?
No, it's more than that. It's so where it connects up by BTI and Jabberwocky
Uh-huh.
down to where it connects to Bandersnatch, I think is 400 feet.
Okay.
I'm pulling that off top of my head, but
That sounds about right.
and
What I'm wondering then is by saving the equestrians 50 feet and building, you know, a little, you know, go back to the main trail for them, if it just confuses the matter.
No, still, it's not saving the equestrians 50 feet. It would be it'd be about a 50-foot connection.
Well, that's what,
So it would save the equestrians probably about 150 feet overall, because they could enter at the start of it, go all the way to Bandersnatch, and then the cutover would be, you know, the cutover would be about 50 feet to get up to the start of Bandersnatch when they cross water line. So it would get them off more than just 50 feet of the trail.
well, this might sound silly then, is, but I can't really picture it. And so if somebody could get like a piece of white paper and draw some lines, doesn't have to be to scale, but just to show me what's happening, and then I'll feel like we could more likely, you know, vote on it with that picture in mind.
So I'm wondering if we could just if we could vote on the trail to just be built, and then we could discuss usage on it. Or do we want to wrap it all into one? Because the usage can be decided anytime at a later date, because
Well,
we've got until November.
That's true. So then so what you're telling me then is for equestrians and this little part where they could use this section of the trail doesn't require any extra, anything different construction wise.
Just a little connection from the trail that we're proposing up to the current water line and across it up to Bandersnatch, which is, like Torsten said, maybe 50 feet.
Okay, the 50 feet then is the connection.
Yes.
Well, looks like Chris is sharing the map so that we can see it. And I see the proposed pedestrian trail is in blue. And is that short little connection is what you're talking about with for the equestrians?
yes, and pedestrians too.
Yep.
Okay, and so that was always in the proposal, and the geologist looked at that too.
Yep. That's always been in it.
Okay, well, that makes me
It's
feel better.
nothing on the trail is changing. It's just the only thing we're kind of discussing is see the highlighted blue section there right now where he has his cursor at.
Yeah,
The equestrians could use that section, and then the cutover. That's there, yeah, and then that's all the equestrians would be able to use.
right, to get to that Bandersnatch.
Yep, to get up to Bandersnatch, right? So
Okay.
the trail is going to be constructed the same way no matter what. It's just a decision on how, if we want to say no equestrians at all and have them go up main water line, or let them use that little connection right there. And I'm okay with either, honestly. But if they did use the new water line and the connection, we would just sign it appropriately.
Okay, well, then this kind of, I think that makes sense. I mean, it's already part of the proposal. So, you know, Chris's clarification is just in the matter of wording for our motion. It doesn't change the proposal. So that's okay with me. What I wonder is, we're approving this trail to go ahead on construction, and we'll defer the decision. How does this sound? This is a question. How does this sound that we'll defer the decision about the use to the Parks and Recreation Department?
There, I would agree with that.
So maybe this, this motion would go that we approve and recommend the construction of the trail as proposed, the water line trail for pedestrians only. Nope, take that back. I'm going to start over. See, I have trouble with thinking about these motions on the fly. So
So if I just, sorry, it's gonna be not as wordy, but I'll just make a motion to approve the waterline trail as proposed. Second.
I think you got to entertain that now, Sil. We got a first and a second.
okay, a move to approve the waterline trail construction as proposed.
Any,
Second? Or I guess any discussion on that? Is that enough? Okay, any seconds?
Yeah, second.
Luke seconds. All in favor? Looks, and anybody against? Okay, looks like we have a majority that is in favor, and Frank just said thumbs up. So yeah, everybody agrees by unanimous decision.
I don't think they even have a thumbs down in this program. This really a democracy.
Yeah, good. Yeah, either agree or shut up.
There is, if you hit the three little dots under reactions, you can get to a thumbs down.
Okay.
Okay, save that one for the next one. Okay, I wanted to talk about the city council annual, well, I guess we're done with trails, right? Thanks, everyone. Torsten says we're done with trails.
Yeah, thanks, Torsten.
And so we're going to move on to the city council annual report. I'm supposed to deliver that on August 17th, and I've never done one. And I was looking for an old annual report, and Chris didn't have last year's, but maybe he has a previous one. I always like to have something to edit rather than starting with a blank page.
Yeah, I can't find anything. I don't think there was one last year due to COVID. I don't know, Nate, you didn't do one, did you? No. So I don't think there was one. And previous to that, I don't think we've had any formal documents. It's just been the chair gets up there and talks. Frank did it. Maybe he has a copy of his.
I think we've had Frank do it even when he wasn't chair, so.
He's so good at it.
He's got a good memory for that, so.
So Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I did do it once when I wasn't the chair, and we probably want to avoid that. But I think I still have a PowerPoint available. It's probably 4 years old, maybe. But I can send that to you if you want.
Yeah, that'd be good. Just to, like I said, I'd rather edit something than start with the blank. This report's going to be short, about 10 minutes. And so if we could brainstorm for a bit, just to remind me of what we did do last year. And I'm guessing then, do they want this? Do they want it to cover, you know, the year of COVID, or do they want us to just cover the last year?
I'd stick to just the last year and you'll be fine.
Okay, so a year back from August.
Great.
And the things that I can remember that we're working on, and maybe I'll go around and ask you guys if you can remember other things, but there was that question of the equestrian use on Snark Trail that we spent quite a bit of time on, and I can look up, you know, what our conclusion was, but that was with the backcountry horsemen, and they had a proposal, and we looked into that quite a bit. And so that was one thing that I know of. Tell me some other things. I'll just go around and ask, and then I will talk about that. We're beginning this climate change discussion. And I wanted to kind of just like go by the numbers, and I could get this information from Chris, but sort of like what was accomplished, or is this a place where you would say, Chris, what was accomplished in the watershed last year? Like how many piles burned or how many acres treated, whatever?
I'm happy to give that to you. I'm just going to keep it to city lands only, since that's Forest Lands Commission.
Sure.
But there is not insignificant amount of work to report, so happy to do that.
Okay. Yeah, so anything you want to report on that about work accomplished, whatever included by that. Anything else that people can think we worked on? Frank?
Yeah, I'm looking for the actual slide right now. It's near the end of the Marty 450, but we've got unit by unit how much carbon is out there, standing and dead. And I don't think anybody in town knows we have this level of monitoring data available. And I would like to see that plugged in, because we're going to talk about climate change. Counting carbs is going to be a big deal.
Okay, well, maybe you can help me pull that together and summarize that.
That's a great point. I'm sure they'll be interested in that, Frank. So
Yeah, particularly the part about, can we sell carbon credits so the city can make a buck? That would be, an income stream would be nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't get into that with council in this report. And that actually, that data was from our monitoring update, which was in 2018 report. So not in the last year. I would keep it a much higher level than that for council. I think that may be more appropriate when we come to council with the climate adaptation document. And it will be more appropriate because there's a whole chapter on carbon.
Okay. What else did we work on last year?
Well, the Waterline Trail final approval.
Okay. And I guess this kind of, you know, beginning to talk to the Forest Service about the road up to White Rabbit Trailhead. Not that we got anywhere, but we opened up that discussion, and then Donna retired. So I'm not sure when we'll pick it up again. Do you think that's worth talking about?
That might be a little premature.
Okay.
And she's the supervisor in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area.
Yeah, I heard that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
This is kind of a non-thing, but you could say, you know, part of our mission is doing like the public outreach and the hikes. You could just say that due to COVID, we couldn't do our public hikes, which we were planning to do. We had 4 scheduled, so that's kind of more of a bummer than an accomplishment, but it is kind of part of our mission, so that might be worthwhile. You can decide if you want to include that or not.
Well, that's a good point. The last summer, we, John and Chris and I attended the Trails Summit, but that might have been more than a year ago. Maybe it was in July of 2020, and I don't know that anything came from it. So I don't know that. I mean, maybe other groups or other people got stuff out of it, but I don't know that we as a commission added anything to it. What do you think, John?
Yeah, it's been so long, I can't even remember what we discussed in it. But what I would do is just look back at all the previous agendas that Chris has sent out every month and just try to skim through all those and make sure there's nothing jumping out that we have talked about.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad to look at that. I was dreading, I didn't want to listen to all the meetings.
Yeah.
But you're right. I could look at the hard copy agendas.
Yeah, because so we talked about mountain biking trails. At some point, we've talked about equestrians on trails, relating mostly to waterline, but the mountain biking was sort of a more general discussion.
Right.
There's
And
also the drone flying.
what was that about Madrones?
Oh, the drones for.
Oh, the drone. Oh yeah, the drone program.
And then did Shannon end up doing her music on top of Mount Ashland, or did all that get bagged? I can't remember.
That was the year before.
Oh shoot. Wait, that was not 20.
Yeah.
Are we talking about 2020 or 2021?
No, when Shannon did that was like in 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, senior moment.
Yeah. The other thing we did was the pods
Oh, yeah.
with OSU. Yeah, and so Chris, and talk about those city lands by the numbers. Maybe you could tell me about the drone program.
Council does know that because they approved it 2 months ago.
Okay.
I don't know that you need to go into too many details, but yeah, we could say we're just patrolling the lower city lands and U.S. Forest Service areas for illegal fires and camping. Well, yeah, city and parks, because we're doing Acid Castle and Lawrence properties for parks too.
Okay.
Just in concert with the Parks Commission.
Okay.
Frank had something to add.
Okay. Well, that seems like that's enough. I mean, I didn't want to miss anything glaring that we did. Looks like Frank might have another thing to add.
Yeah, we got one glaring thing. Looking at Marty's monitoring data, we got at least 12 units that the stand densities are getting pretty high and they're a concern. And if you want to get a little more, I don't know, generous perhaps, maybe we've got 20 units that are candidates for some kind of thinning right now, because based on the drought that we're having, you can expect insect mortality or tree mortality at least starting next spring. It's happening right now. So you might just give them a heads up that there could be something coming down the line on this. And pretty soon.
Maybe just a heads up about the density, general density and the drought, about forest conditions.
It's more than general density, because we've got about 20 units that are already identified as being beyond the stand densities we would like.
Oh, yeah.
You know
Yes,
this
I
is
understand, but for purposes of the report to city council to talk about in general, we know we have stands that are overly dense and and that, droughts, and the drought will exacerbate, forest health problems. Looks like Nate's got some.
Yeah, I mean, I would just tie in and potentially mention that I think it was that year, Marty came out with the tree mortality sort of PDF or data.
Yeah.
And tie that in with the fact, so if we have some tree stands that are dense and then we have tree mortality, and with the heat, we can predict there's probably going to be some more mortality. Just the fact that that is going to be something that we're on and going to be needing to address probably fairly soon.
That was my idea. Yeah, we're gonna be like, be ready. We've got units on board that are at a threshold. So like, get ready, city. We're gonna want money for thinning or whatever.
Okay.
Are on the money side, but just say that we're monitoring conditions as they develop. We have some areas of concern that we're following. We don't know what the outcome is going to be yet. Trending, not so great.
Yeah, I mean, you just look out there, Chris, and I worry just as I walk around the watershed and ride around the watershed at what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm sure if I got out some, just my general pictures that I take when I'm out there, I probably could have a photographic record of those trends. But yeah, I'll just talk about it in general, just so that they know we're looking at that. Okay, anything else you want to make sure that we hit on with the report to council? Okay, well, I'll see what I can do, and I'll try to get a draft out to folks so you can look at it, and then I'll be delivering that on August 17th. If any of you want to be there.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is a discussion that Stephanie, our city council liaison, brought up. And she sent me an email and she wanted us to consider fire closures. And she says, Sil, I've gotten several questions about the safety of keeping the access road to Alice and Wonderland parking lot open with the fire danger and weather conditions. Concern for watershed safety noted. So she just wanted us to consider it. And talking about the access road to, the White Rabbit Trailhead is how we know it. And, I think we all share concerns about fire danger. What I did tell her was that the trailhead is on National Forest, and closing that would be their decision, of course, with involvement from the city. And if and most of all, that she should, if she was worried about it, that, to talk to Chris. I think this is a good example of, this is something that city council is asking us to look at, and for our expertise, and looking to know whether we would make a recommendation to city council. And
A quick question, I'm sorry.
I think
I missed in the beginning, who had asked you that, who did this letter come from to you? I'm sorry.
Stephanie, our city council liaison. What's Stephanie's last name?
Steffinger.
Steffinger.
No T, Seffinger.
Oh, okay. So that's who brought it up, and you know, so some discussion, and Jason has something he wants to say.
I don't think that's our road to close. I mean, it's a Forest Service road. I don't know that, I think the only motion we could make is bringing it to city council to ask them if we want to bring it to Forest Service to close it, but doesn't seem like it's our decision. But Chris, am I right or wrong on that?
You're
Actually, that road to White Rabbit is the city's road. There's no forest easement from the pavement up to the first curve where city land ends and it turns into private. Then there's a private stretch in there for a while before you get to Forest Service, but the Forest Service does have an easement on private. We could independently shut the gate, which we wouldn't do because we want to work in partnership, but the gate to that whole area is on city land without a Forest Service access easement. Little history there. There was an agreement between the city and the Forest Service many years ago to implement closures during certain thresholds of drought and fire danger. That's kind of fallen by the wayside as recreation has developed in the area. And people's livelihoods depend on recreation, which didn't used to be the case. We've got outfitters that are licensed by the Forest Service who bring people to the watershed. The trail connections go between city and Forest Service such that you can't have a closure on one or the other without cutting people's access off, either sticking them above on trails or not allowing them to get to open trails by closing the city portions below. So it has to be done in concert. It was done after the fires last year. There was a closure implemented on the Rogue River Siskiyou, and the city kind of monitored the situation to see if anybody was still using it cautiously. I don't think we followed up with closures in the end, just to allow some access because it was obviously still COVID. People needed to be able to get out. But it is, nonetheless, it's a significant issue. My experience is that having people on the trail is more of a plus than a minus. Yes, it does allow access for illegal camping, though that is on a pretty significant downtrend in my experience. We don't have nearly as much camping as we did 5 and then 10 years ago. We have significantly less, in part due to the drone patrols, I think in part due to there being housing offered now at the Super 8 Motel through Aura, which has been a really successful organization. So there's options for people that didn't exist before. Yes, there could always be an accident. Somebody could start a fire. But those fires get reported much more quickly because there's recreational presence in the area of people with cell phones who are going to call in illegal campfires or illegal activity. And we'll end up knowing much sooner than we would if there were a closure.
Yeah, so, oh, go ahead, John.
I hear what Chris is saying, but I'm curious if there's any financial or safety impact to closing the access to the White Rabbit trailhead where the pavement ends for just while we're in red flag fire danger. So until like the first rain, especially considering that people who want to access those trails up there still can access the trails. They just have to go further. They just can't drive as far. But so anyway, that's basically my question.
Again, it has to be done in partnership because you're closing off access to federal land by doing that. And it's not, it is a small feat for the Forest Service to pull off an area closure. Oftentimes they have to get reviewed by the Department of Justice, which we had to go through in the AFR project for helicopter closures. And it took a long time to get that through. In my experience, they don't want to do that unless they're going to do either forest-wide closure, which I think is what they implemented after the fires last year, which, you know, that means all the way to the coast and up in the Cascades, including then the Siskiyous. That's a piece of work. And then, or just implementing an area closure if it were either the Ashland watershed or the whole Siskiyou Mountains Ranger District, is really challenging on their end. So I think it has to be a very convincing argument, and I'm not convinced that we really have that strong a footing to stand on.
Yeah, no, I'll just,
Luke
I'll
had
jump in.
some, yeah.
My 2 cents would be, I don't support a closure at all. I'm actually fairly unconcerned about fire risk up there. I'm more concerned about the people living in their vans and greenway fires than I am about, you know, if there were people living in vans, I don't think there's anyone living in like school buses up there, but there's people in the lower park living in school buses. So like, that's the real fire danger, not mountain bikers at White Rabbit Trailhead. So this seems to me more like an emotional thing than a rational thing. And I think if we just say, where's the threat? What are the assets at risk? It makes no sense to close that right now. So I wouldn't support it. I don't know if we're going to vote on that, but I would be a nay if we do vote on that.
Yeah, I think, you know, I told Stephanie much of what we were talking about with, you know, the coordination between the Forest Service and the city, and, you know, and referred her to Chris, and I don't think she ever followed up to talk to Chris about it. So I think it's just good that we had this discussion for the record, because she asked us to, and that's a good thing. I think it also, like what John pointed out, it wouldn't be bad to address this at in our amendments, like when we're talking about other triggers. If we're talking about triggers for when we might, you know, do a salvage sale, or we're talking about triggers of when we need to do some thinning because we've reached, you know, too dense of stands, we could also identify triggers in which we would initiate discussions with the Forest Service, or how we would respond to discussions from the Forest Service about closures, because anytime we do it, it would have to be coordinated with them for many, many reasons. But it would, I think it would behoove us to have that discussion so that they know we're thinking of it. And when we might reach those triggers where we would recommend a closure. So that's all I would add to that. But I don't see where I don't know that Stephanie was asking us for a decision. She was asking us to discuss it.
And turn off.
And because people from the public were asking her about it, which was what made her ask about it, I don't feel like we can just out and out say no, that we should have some reasons for what we're saying and going forward, especially since we're writing about adapting for climate change. We would want to have those triggers for when closures would recommend. Last year, the Forest Service closed down the entire state of California, all national forests in California. And, you know, that was a pretty big deal. And when their decision is based on, you know, all kinds of things, including available resources, that, you know, when they feel that they can't afford to have, you know, any fire starts. But that's a whole nother thing. And that's just what I would like to see, is that we address it for the future.
Did Luke get to comment? I had to step away for a second.
Yes, he did.
Okay,
You could repeat it, Luke. It was pretty simple and
simple and short and sweet.
I don't remember.
you just said no, you wouldn't support it.
I said no, I wouldn't support it. I don't really think it's in our mission to be recommending to the Forest Service and then the city to close roads. I'm not, like, I do get that it's part of the forest lands issue, but like, I'm not feeling it. I don't think that's really on us to say yes or no. I don't see like school buses with chimneys coming out and people like hanging out, bums and hobos smoking cigarettes up there. I see that in the park and on the greenway. That's where the fire is going to come from. I don't think it's going to be a mountain biker or someone walking their dog that's going to start the fire that burns down Ashland up there. It could. It just seems assets at risk and likelihood of ignition is way more down with all the people that you're seeing down on Granite Street than it is up there. That would be my 2 cents, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what Chris said was much more political and a great thing. If you wanted to reiterate something to staff, it'd be that we think having people up there is actually promotes us being aware of what's happening up there, that is low risk, and it's very complicated because of the nature of multiple agencies. I mean, as simple as that. But yeah, so great.
plus we spent all that AFR money treating it, so we should be saying it's super fireproof, right?
Totally fireproof.
Yeah.
I came in a little late. Can you folks hear me?
Yeah.
So I may have missed some of the conversation, but I'll relay what's happening forest region wide. We went to a level 4 today in Douglas County, which means nobody in the woods. I've got an operation on a property in Douglas County right now, and we're seeing what the possibilities are of getting a waiver. Don't know, but part of it is just the inability to separate out all the different user groups. And so they simplify it and they just say nobody. They don't have the staff. They really are having a tough time even looking at individual operations. So it becomes level 4 has only happened a handful of times in my career, but it seems to be happening a lot more these last few years. And it basically means everybody out of the woods, and including people who can help with fires, particularly loggers who are out there anyway. So, it's kind of a profession-wide, culture-wide administrative reality, with the fire danger being really high. I agree, people on mountain bikes and so forth and so on aren't likely to start fires. But I think that the folks that are trying to administer the level 4 just are having difficulty. Probably don't have the staff, everybody's on fires to separate out the user groups.
I wonder if the city could just put little sandwich boards at the entrance to the road, just giving people that extra warning to be vigilant and watch for stuff, kind of like they've done in Lithia Park. I don't know. I was just thinking of some modest thing we could do just to raise the level of awareness, particularly at that entrance, since it's kind of off the beaten path.
Well, I think the Forest Service, if I'm remembering right, at the White Rabbit Trailhead, the Forest Service did put up some additional, signing, fire prevention signing. And whether, the city does that too, I don't know. but
I'm all for signs. I love signs.
does that seem, I don't know, Jason, you're there. I don't know if that's would be under your purview or Chris's, about if we were to recommend some additional, be careful with fire signs? Or do you think it's helpful or what?
Signs, can always be helpful. It never hurts to put signs up. I'm not opposed to signs.
Do you have a stock of those kinds of signs that you could put up?
No, you'd have to have them made.
Yeah, the Forest Service has to have their signs at Rabbit. There might be a spot right at that lower gate that most people don't even notice because it's always open. But there may be a spot to mount a sign there right at that pole on the right.
Yeah, because that's the pole that has the crest to coast sign on it.
Probably does.
Yeah, that's, I think it's got graffiti on it now.
I had some signs, might have one, says no camping, no fires, protect watershed. It's not specific to the situation right now, but it, can be just a reminder. But there's, I think, that same sign, because that's actually a Forest Service sign that I had, but which is probably like some some crime I'm committing by keeping a Forest Service sign, but it that kind of gets the same message, unless Jason, you've got something laying around. Probably only have one of them.
We don't have anything like that, but if you have one, we can install it.
Let me look around, see if I can find it.
There's another part of the discussion too, and again, maybe you guys talked about this. We're talking about the chance that someone would start a fire, and pretty low chance, but I've done work for the city of Medford in Prescott Park, Roxanne Butte. And on the morning of the Almeida fire, I called them up and I said, you guys should shut down the park. And they said, why? I said, well, you're inviting the public to be up there. And if this is a bad fire day, they should have some warning. In fact, I would really suggest you just close the park, because if the fire with the southeast winds did enter Prescott Park, there'd be no way for those folks to get out of there. It's a liability. And to the prudent landowner would respond somehow to say, you shouldn't be up there. And so it goes the other way also, that at certain times a year, if you have trails, you're inviting folks to be up there. Of course, it's on some level, there's a sense of responsibility. They responded, oh, we don't want to do that. But the next day it was shut down. The park was shut down, and there were signs and tried to redirect the recreational traffic somewhere else. So, there's also that side of the coin too, in these kind of situations.
Well, so it sounds like I'm hearing from the group, there's nobody that's recommending to recommend to the city for a fire closure. And we've talked about plenty of reasons why we wouldn't. And, both the positive aspect or the benefits of having people out there, and, the realities of access and the risks involved, and we're not inclined to recommend a closure. Do we need a decision on that? And since I've never had a city council person ask us to talk about something, do we need a decision to go forward, to not do the closure?
I thought, Sil, you said she recommended that we discuss it. So can we just say it's been discussed, no further action taken at this time, and move on?
I guess you could forward our pros and cons to her too, with sort of the general feeling or consensus of the commission.
Or she could watch the video.
Yeah, probably I would just tell her, and I would skip the document writing unless somebody else wants to do it. The pros and cons document. So I'll just tell her we discussed it, and I guess we don't have to make a decision about something we're not going to do. So, okay. So if we're ready to move on, the next thing that's on the agenda is our climate adaptation process update and discussion. So today I forwarded out our process of how we're going to do it, who's paired up and who's working on which chapters. And did you all receive that? Should we go over it? Clear as mud. Any questions? So for Nate and Luke, we assigned you guys vegetation, because that's a really big chapter. So we only gave you one chapter. You've got vegetation. And for Frank and John, they get 3 chapters. They get hydrology, riparian, and carbon. And if you see fit, and you want to combine riparian and hydrology, you can do that, or you can keep those separate. That's up to you. And then Leslie and I will take on recreation and wildlife. So the last time we were all together, we all did the soils, and so I hope that gave everybody an idea of how you would go about the remaining chapters.
So just to confirm, Sil, so we'll be taking the slides from Marty's awesome presentation and then converting those into like a Word documents for each chapter. Is that what you're envisioning, or are you envisioning something different?
Well, that would be our end product. Yeah, is a draft document that we're going to take to the public. And so these individual chapters on resources, would be to look at what Marty's done, just like what we did with soils, and affirm that, yeah, this is right on. This is what we want in the document. If there's any edits, like, well, maybe you think it needs more to address something additional that he didn't address, or maybe there's some things he put in there that you didn't want, or that you would tweak. An example would be, if I was doing the soils, but I'm not, we did it as a group. If that was my chapter, and I would have said, I wouldn't have any talk about preventing fire. It would be about increasing resilience to wildfire. I use that as an example because that will come up in many chapters. So if it comes up in the chapters that I have, that would be one of my inputs. So as you go through those, again, edit, change, delete, add, and recognize that these are all just individual chapters. We all know that everything's connected, so there'll be some overlap with other chapters. And that there's some things like that are common to all the chapters, like monitoring or mitigations. And I had a little bit of a talk with Frank about that and how would we want to handle that. So with each chapter, you might have mitigations for the various resources. But then at the end, in our conclusions, we might round up all the mitigations and have a whole nother chapter on mitigations. We might have a same with monitoring. You know, there'll be monitoring of all the different resources, and it would be addressed in those individual resource chapters. But then again, we would round it all up in a monitoring chapter.
Would it make more sense just to keep it like clear and concise if we just say in each resource chapter, we can say see monitoring chapter for more of how this resource will be monitored? I don't see why we would put it in twice. That just seems like it's going to take up lots of space and just make the document dense when it could be like sleek.
Yeah, I think that works too. Totally. And I think that we just have to get this first round under our belts and get going and see how it goes. The way that we set it up was that if everybody's meeting once to get a feel of how it works and you got some questions or you got some stumbling blocks, there'll be an opportunity to save those up and meet with Marty in the middle there, get your questions answered, and then bring those questions back to your pair. That's kind of how I envisioned it. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, you wrote it out very concise, not concisely, sorry, but very thoroughly.
Yeah.
And I think that that was really clear. I just wanted to mention one thing that I just kind of came to mind, which is this is going to be a document for others to present, and there's going to be questions. And what Marty did a really good job of, but made it very, a lot of slides, was having all that background information. I was just thinking, as we're going through these and we're coming up with our bullets, which is kind of change persist, but like our condensed bullets, if each group is noticing, some of those background slides that Marty's, put there for reference for us, let's just try to maybe just do a miniature bibliography that would be at the end, and then kind of just reference. So then if someone's looking at it and saying, well, why do they want to do this? And they have their little spiel they want to say, if it had a tag that then they could look back and see one or two studies that we're basing this off of, because Marty's already done that legwork, it's already there. So
yeah.
We're just mindful about when we're stealing his information that he's already provided for us to make these bullet points. If we could just keep that train of thought going and that one step further, I think it could be a really clean, really clear document that'd be defensible.
I think you're right there. Frank.
Couldn't agree more, Nate. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also this was a little bit about it shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but it was that when I wrote those notes, I was thinking, are we getting the information that Marty needs? Because in my mind, before today, I was thinking of Marty as the ID team leader, the editor, that he was the one that was on the hook for this and we were helping him. But the wake up call is actually Marty is our technical advisor for us to produce this. And so with that in mind and knowing, you know, that we're all pressed for time and, you know, how much of this do we want to do? You know, keeping things short and concise will be key, but also going into this, we should identify then if not Marty being the ID team leader and editor, who is that going to be? Because we do need to get it into you know, a final draft document to be able to take it to the public.
I'll be the writer editor if no one else wants to call it. And so if all the teams submit it to me, I'll just like, you're talking about like formatting it and getting the wording and the phrasing, making it all flow. Is that what you mean? Not necessarily.
Yep. Yeah.
I'd be happy to do that and or do it in a team if someone else really wants to get in on it. But yeah, I actually enjoy doing that. So I'm happy to volunteer my time to do that.
Wow, that's great, Luke.
Thanks, Luke.
And being that, then you know, I hope that you'll then pipe up like you just did about those sort of formatting questions of what goes in what sections, or you know, does this warrant a whole nother chapter or like that. So yeah, I hope that so that we get you the end products that you need in order to be able to do that. And so as we go through this first round, then when we come back together on the 14th, you'll be able to say, oh, you know, I can work with this, I can take this and do it. Or you might say, wow, you know, Leslie and Sil, your chapter on wildlife, you know, you'd need way less detail or more detail or whatever, because you're going to be the one that's making it all flow. But I am like so thrilled that you're going to do that.
But Luke, do you feel like you need more specifics then on what comes out of this first round in order to help get to that product? Do we need a common format of an outline that gets filled out? We didn't really dive into that part during the soils. We did a lot of talking, verifying, you know, just trying to get everybody on the same page, but we didn't come up with a product per se that's gonna get us. I mean, we did move down the road considerably and just having to figure that out, but there probably should have been something at the end of that was a product of that effort that will get us to the next stage of actually drafting a chapter using that information.
Frank.
I have a question for Luke on the role of editor, how he envisions it. You were talking about format, but who makes the call on content? Who makes the call on what specific information goes into
Right,
that
that's not me.
chapter?
So I thought that we were kind of doing the ID team model for this. And yeah, the pairs are going to provide that. We'll hash that out. We'll talk and discuss and go back and forth, get those where you want. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought what was being asked for was someone just to link all those pieces together and make them so that the flow and the language and the tone, similar to what we did on the Ashland Forest Plan, just where you end up with like 7 different kind of versions, writing versions or whatever, and then you kind of just want to make them one. So that is what I was envisioning, but if I was wrong on that, then let's discuss further.
Oh no, I'm with Sil on this one too. That is kind of a thankless task you're taking on. I'm glad you're doing it. So appreciate it.
Yeah, so I mean, just to reiterate, like I won't be changing any content. If I have a question on something, I'll follow up, but I won't be like deleting stuff or adding or sneaking in like weird tables into your section, Frank. I promise I won't do that.
Frank's section will already have weird tables.
Yeah, so as far as content of like yes or no, I think that's really for the group when we come back together and and we talk about it. I don't know that any one person is going to say yes, that goes in there or that doesn't go in there. If we're remembering this is we're advisory and we're to take it to the public and we're going to get their public input, and then that'll be a whole nother task. The next round will be how do we incorporate that. But for now, I'd like to just get started and see what we've got. And, we'll know by next month whether that's right or not. And if it's not right, well, all we've lost is a month and we can go back. Frank.
Yeah, yes to all that. Just for the group, put on your thin skin, put on your thick skin, because we're going to get a lot of scrutiny once this thing goes public. Just so everybody's aware that we're going to have a lot of new friends.
Yes, a lot of experts that have heard things on the radio and read about climate change and get their news from Facebook all about climate change, and we'll get all of that.
Hey, I use sunscreen.
Just a reminder on the process points when you're going back and working through those areas. So there's the brief version, that condensed version that Marty sent out of the original 450 slides. That would be, and essentially what we went through in the soils piece in the study session was that condensed version for the soils piece. So that's a really good place to work from. But if you're coming up with questions, verify that your answers aren't already in the 450, which could save us a lot of time in the next meeting in September of Marty having to go ad nauseum over questions that are already answered in the larger document. So the Forest Lands Commission site has the link that was sent out in the email to the 450. If it's in the email, you can't get it, go to the Forest Lands Commission site in the document list as your ultimate reference. So that just remember to fall back to that first for questions. And then if it's not in there, yeah, bring them to the next meeting for sure.
Sounds good. Well, I'm ready to dive in myself. So does anybody have anything else they want to say about process and their assignments?
I think it was said, but maybe just to say again, make sure you track your references. If you're carrying things forward, don't lose the reference where it came from, because it'll have to be annotated in the final version in some format that we agree to, but don't lose the links from the information data to what Marty put together. To be a pain to go back and try to reassemble those.
Yeah, and keep notes. At some point, we will, especially when Luke goes into his editing mode, we'll probably have to have some sort of shared document like Google Docs or Dropbox or something. But I don't think we need that now, and we're just working in pairs. Does that feel okay to everybody?
If somebody has the link to the condensed version, could you forward it again to me?
Oh, and there's a link to the 450 as well.
That's in today's email.
And and the condensed version, I have a PDF version, but I don't have a link.
It was sent out, I think a couple of times over the past 2 months, ahead of study sessions.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it had changed from the ones that was sent out as study session materials, so.
I can,
A couple of additions here for all of you. First, I've got a pretty large literature cited that of course, I didn't include. Other than in specific slides, I tried to find something from a publication, particularly a good one, well-known one that was representative of the particular issue at hand. But there's a huge library of information that I gathered. And if the time comes that we need to cite some of those, the degree to which we need, I've got all that. It just depends on where we go with the document. I'd urge folks to eventually be thinking about trying to do the integration between chapters. You're going to have individual chapters that you're going to work on, but I found in the process of doing this work that my thought process changed as I included other chapters, and it actually had situations where what was appropriate from one perspective was a challenge from another. And in the first session, there were, at least I cataloged 3 of those that seemed like they were mutually exclusive. The one that comes to mind is we want to maintain vegetation and fuels to protect soils from eroding, and we want to remove vegetation and fuels from a fire perspective. Those kind of situations, and the one that Sil brought up about wildfire, if we'd had the luxury to go the vegetation chapter, there's a much more elaborate discussion of that particular issue. So I think after we get through the chapters, that our challenge will be to do this integration. And I urge you to keep track of what I call conundrums. They're like situations that can be one way or the exact opposite, depending on your objectives. And we do have a number of those in this landscape. And with climate change, it's going to be important that we understand as best we can where we go with those kind of situations.
Well, Marty, I talked a little bit about that in the email that just went out this afternoon. And those areas that you call conundrums, that's where mitigations, those are mitigations, in development. And so if everybody just keeps track of those, again, and then we'll round those all up. And like Chris said, before you, or as you come up with those, I would hope, and because we are looking at a ecosystem, not just individual resources, that we're always looking for those places where it shows up in multiple chapters. So, so just keep track of those and we won't lose them. So we have a little bit of time left, and if nobody has anything left on the process, what we've got is next step is scheduling. And I think we'll leave the scheduling is that we want to have these this first round done by September 14th to present to the full commission. And then the individual scheduling of pairs, we'll leave that to you. Chris, was there, and then the meeting with Marty in between, kind of depends on when the pairs are meeting. So we don't have time. I mean, it's too premature to set that meeting yet. But did you have something else in mind, Chris?
No, I think you're just gonna have to reach out. Marty, what's your preference in trying to figure out times? People just reach out individually to you, try to set something up.
Yeah, I think if there's just 3 people or 2, depending on the situation, finding times at work should be relatively easy. I tend to like late afternoons or early evening, but this is kind of priority. So I'd be glad to, if it's pairs, if you can give me, a handful of times, or if it's an individual handful of times that works for you, I'll bet I'll find one that works for me.
Okay, and then after, when all the pairs have their first meeting scheduled, if you could let me know, then I can schedule that meeting with Marty for the half of the pair. I mean, anybody could go to that wanted, but I know for myself, I want to minimize the meetings. And so I'm going to draw straws between Leslie and I. But, there's nothing to say that if you don't draw the straw, you can still go and talk to Marty in between.
So when is it going to be delivered to me?
We're going to deliver what we do as pairs on September 14th. And so your editing task won't kick in until after that.
But just to be clear, so the pairs aren't necessarily authoring a draft this time. Are they just going through the slide and creating an outline and verifying the information and the assumptions of the suggested strategies? Or are they actually trying to dive in and create a draft for text review, which is quite a bit different based on where you're starting at?
Yeah, I would suggest the former, that you just do it in outline form, because we don't have like a consistent format and a consistent wording and the way this is going to go yet. So I'd hate to have people, get into wordsmithing and then find out, well, that's not the format we're going to do. So if you could just outline what you come up with, you might just be reaffirming, the outline that Marty has already for your section. I don't know that, but that's why I don't think that this first round shouldn't be a lot of work and a lot of detail or new information. We're just going off of what Marty's done to date and getting in an outline with the thought of a draft document would be the next step.
Right. So Luke, then maybe you're not really going to do anything until October at the earliest.
Yeah, cool. That's all I was looking for. So that all sounds good. That's loud and clear. Yeah. So we'll provide our kind of outline at the 14th meeting, and then there'll be some discussion, and then sometime after that, I will start working on it. So perfect.
One thing I'd urge all of you to do, we did in the first study session that I thought was really worthwhile, was to go through that in the adaptation options, the estimation that I made for persisting in the way we're doing things, or changing, or a little of both. Some of the best discussions, really good, were when the suggestion was to change or to persist, and someone said, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we ought to do this. That's really useful. And it's also useful if the pairs pretty much strongly agree, yeah, we should continue doing this, or no, we really need to change and agree. So that's one way to go through it relatively quickly. And I thought it was really some great comments that came out of that study session because of looking at that.
Yeah, I think so too, Marty. And also, just because, recreation and wildlife is mine and Leslie's chapter, anybody that says, that has a passion or says, I'd really like for you to put that in there, feel free to reach out, and certainly in those, that middle meeting with Marty would also be a time to say, pass this back to your pair. This is what I think about wildlife. And then that would come back to our pair to deal with it. So we'll all have an opportunity to talk about all of these subjects. The pairs is just to expedite the actual work that you're doing. So we, with next steps in scheduling, we don't have too much more to say about that. We did put on the agenda to begin, as time allows, the vegetation chapter. I think not on that. I think we ought to just let Nate and Luke go on that, because we don't have enough time to
Yeah,
give
sorry,
it a
my
decent
mistake.
start. I think
shouldn't
I
have
see
been on.
Nate with the thumbs up there. And with that, that concludes what we have on our agenda. And if we have any new business or commissioner comments, we could actually leave early. I'm not seeing anything there. So let's call it early.
Hey,
Okay, bye. Good luck with everybody. And yeah, let me know what your paired schedules are going to be. And good luck.
thanks for all the hard work.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Frank, I'll email you.